Question. Hey Kim, now that the more of the Epstein files have been released, there is now a picture unfurling of how the power elites form a global network where they both enable one another, but also this is all about manipulation, and they would not hesitate to double-cross another to avoid their own downfall. As the information is being revealed, it is becoming clear how there are certain links between countries which are more dominated by power elites, such as the US, Israel, Russia, even the UK, and more, including ties to royalty. Also, corruption within legal systems, police, doctors, and so on is being exposed. It seems to me that a lot of what was being dismissed as conspiracy theories is now turning out to be real on the world stage. Several years ago, I came to a point of simply dismissing the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, and I still stand by the implausibility of many of those wild theories, some of which were promoting Trump and Putin as saviors. It appears that there is a massive web of conspiracy being brought to light, and now more than ever, we must use our discernment and God wisdom to see through this insane web of illusion. I'm curious what your take on this is. Well, first of all, I think we need to make a distinction between conspiracy theories and conspiracies. Because if you just take a casual look at history, you can see that there have always been conspiracies. There's always been groups of people who have been trying to gain advantages for themselves by controlling the population, for example. So I think there's no way of denying that there are various conspiracies. But on the other hand, when you look at, as the person says, the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, it is a rabbit hole. Because there's so many conspiracy theories, they are so crazy, so some of them are just so far out that most normal people will just shake their heads. And that is precisely the point. I actually think that the vast majority of conspiracy theories are deliberately made up by the power elite, or people paid by them, in order to create such confusion and chaos that people dismiss the whole phenomenon of conspiracies. So it's actually the power elite promoting these conspiracy theories in order to hide their own existence and their influence, the real conspiracies that are going on. Now, I'm not the only one who is beginning to say this. There is actually a British economist, a professor in economy called Richard Murphy, and he recently posted a video about conspiracies and conspiracy theories. And he's saying in there that there are certainly conspiracies that are going on. But the thing is, it's not these secret meetings in dark rooms with people performing satanic rituals and stuff. It's actually people who are considered upstanding citizens, but they're part of the elite, and they are conspiring to give themselves a privileged position, a powerful position, and influence democratic societies in ways that the population can't do, and it's actually undermining democracy. So I would go a little bit further than he's doing, because he's coming more from a mainstream, but it's still definitely worth it to watch his video. And so I would go a little bit further and say that the real issue here is that there has always, and you can see it as far back as you look in history, there's always been a power elite of people who believe they are fundamentally superior to the general population. And because they are superior, they have a right to exercise power. They should not be limited by anything. Not the laws of the land, not religion, not morals, not ethics. Nothing should limit them. They should be allowed to do whatever they want to do, regardless of the consequence this has for other people or even for the population at large. And they're simply coming from this total conviction that they are fundamentally superior to Homo sapiens, to normal human beings. And this is what I hope will be exposed in the coming years. That this, I talked about the Epstein files, where I said I hope this Epstein files will expose that there is a power elite of people who want to be able to buy sexual services from minors if that's what they want. And they should be able to buy anything as a service. People should just be a commodity. Young girls, just a commodity you can trade. And so with everything else. They believe they should be able to buy it or take it with force or intimidation. And I talk about in my video about how the world was created, who these people are, where they came from, why they have a different outlook on life. It's not that they're fundamentally different than other people, but they have a state of mind that is fundamentally different from most people because they're willing to use force. And they're willing to do it without any regard for the consequences this has for other people or for humanity at large. So these are people, I mean, I hesitate to call them evil because this always brings up this, again, the satanic rituals and evil as a force. No, these people are just completely self-centered. It's about me, and nothing else. Now, so in a sense, what I would say about this is, it's not like there's a group of these that meet in some secret room in Davos, Switzerland, or somewhere else, and they plan how to take over the world. That's not how I see it. But I do see it more as an unconscious conspiracy where the power elite, they may not cooperate directly, but they all agree that it's important to maintain or create an elitist society where a small elite can exercise power way beyond what they should be allowed to. Obviously, this has always been the case in a dictatorship. You look at any dictatorship today, any dictatorship in the past, it's always been a small elite. Even the Soviet Union was supposed to be the workers' paradise. But there was still a party elite who exercised enormous power over society and over people's lives. And what has happened in democratic nations is that you have a constitutional system that gives equal rights to all people. But there has emerged, especially in the 1800s in the United States, there emerged this power elite of these very, very rich people. And they started undermining democracy by using their money, by using money. In the communist society, the Soviet Union, was raw force by the power elite. In the feudal societies of Europe in the Middle Ages, it was the ownership of land. The elite owned the land, but there was also raw force. But in the democracies, it's money. It's using money to undermine. And the fact of the matter is that we have in most democratic nations, we have a political system that's democratic, but we have an economic system that is fundamentally anti-democratic because it still gives unfair advantages to those who have accumulated money, that they can use the money to accumulate more money, and they can use the money to buy, even if they're not buying it directly, they can still, through intimidation, gain political influence. And the smaller countries don't have it as much as the bigger countries because the stakes are bigger. So the bigger countries attract these power elite people that are more ruthless, more focused on power than the smaller nations. It's not that you don't have them in the smaller nations, but if you put them on a scale of the most ruthless, they are concentrated in the bigger countries. The reason why I'm saying that there isn't this conscious conspiracy is that the power elite people, as the question I actually mentions, that they would not hesitate to double-cross another to avoid their own downfall. Well, the power elite people are fundamentally divided. And the reason why they are divided is that they have gone into what I talk about in many videos, the illusion that they are separate beings, and they are using the duality, consciousness, to really justify And basically what they're all trying to do is they're trying to set themselves up as being superior in some way. And they're using the duality consciousness to try and do this. So you can see the old dualistic polarity between capitalism and communism. So you would have a power elite in the Soviet Union that were using the Communist Party and the power it had to set themselves up as having power. Then you had a power elite in the West, especially in the United States, of the billionaires that was trying to set themselves up as having power through money. But these two systems, the capitalist system, the communist system, they were both elitist. They were both directed at concentrating power in the hands of fewer and fewer people. I think it should be easy to see in the Soviet Union. Many people haven't seen it in the capitalist system because they have believed the smokescreen put out by the power elite in the West that capitalism and free enterprise are the same. But they're not, because free enterprise is an economic system where the government uses its power to maintain free competition and limit those who are trying to take over the market and create monopolies. Capitalism is a system that gives free rein to those who are seeking a monopoly. So what you see in a world of capitalism is that corporations get bigger and bigger. They swallow up other companies. And if you take this to its logical extreme, it will be that one corporation owns all means of production. And in a communist system, the state owns all means of production. So it's the same thing. Once you have the capitalist system going to its ultimate extreme, well, it's essentially the same as the communist system. A very small elite controls everything. So anyway, what I was saying is, these people are using the duality consciousness to try and set themselves up as being superior. And because they are always opposites in duality, like capitalism and communism, nobody has ever achieved it. Their ultimate goal, nobody has ever achieved it. Because those who are the most selfish of the power elite, they do not want to share power or glory with anybody else. And that's why they can't cooperate. Now, they can create systems that are hierarchical, where you have one person who is acknowledged as a superior one, like, for example, Hitler. And then you have lower rankings, maybe different levels of rankings of people who submit to him and follow him. So therefore you had, in the Nazi party in Germany, it was basically a power elite. It was basically a conspiracy. And you can see how Hitler conspired, even though he was democratically elected, to then subvert the democratic system and take total control. So that was a clear conspiracy. And it kept being a conspiracy to maintain their power once they had it. But you also see that what caused Hitler's downfall was this. He wanted to be the most powerful person in the world, and therefore he had to attack on two fronts at the same time. He basically had to try to take over the world, and that was what broke him. So it's the same thing with other power elite people you see during history, that they can never stop. They always have to go too far, because what they want is the total domination that just can't be achieved, because there will always be somebody else who's opposing it. And therefore, this is what prevents there from being one worldwide conspiracy, is that these people are always divided. One takes one dualistic extreme, another takes the other dualistic extreme, and they're fighting each other. So what I hope will become more and more obvious in the coming time is that there's always been this power struggles going on between these power elites, and that enormous amounts of resources and human lives and human energy have been sucked into this completely pointless struggle for superiority, for supremacy. And that it's time that we in the democratic world become aware of this, and that we, the people, simply say, we will not allow this to go on in our democracies. We will not allow our energy, our lives, our children's lives, to be pulled into this senseless struggle, completely senseless struggle for superiority and supremacy. We will not let our lives be consumed by supporting any of these power elites. And that's what I hope will emerge in the next 10 years or so, that there will really be a growing awareness of this power elite. You can see the pattern in history where you take the French Revolution. There was a power elite of the noble class and the kings who had total control. So that's what I call the established power elite. I actually have some videos in my series about how the world works, where I talk about this. And then you saw the revolutionaries. They formed an aspiring power elite. And once they had taken over, at least for a time, they became even more suppressive than the old power elite. You say the same thing in Russia. The Tsar and those around him obviously formed a power elite, but the Bolsheviks, they also became a power elite after they took over, and then they became even more repressive of the people. So you see this pattern, and you see how this has impacted world history in very, very profound ways. And it is just simply, these power elite people who are forever competing for superiority. My dad is stronger than your dad. No, I'm stronger than you. It's just nonsensical. And it's the vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Because they can't ever achieve it. They can never achieve it. It's pointless. And I think when people begin to see this, then we can make some progress in terms of freeing democratic nations from these hidden influence of these various power elites. I just think that we need to go beyond the conspiracy theories. And as I said, I think the power elite, they've always been trying to hide their existence. So you go back, Middle Ages of Europe, the feudal system. There was a king, there was a nobleman, and then there was the church, and the population were virtually slaves. They weren't really hiding their existence so much, but they were portraying themselves as being necessary because the people couldn't rule themselves. Why couldn't the people rule themselves? Well, because they were illiterate and uneducated. Why were they illiterate and uneducated? Because the nobleman who owned the land where the people lived wouldn't allow them to learn to read. And the church didn't want them to learn to read because then they could read the Bible on their own instead of having the priest tell them what it said. And so it was just a self-reinforcing system. But anyway, my point is, it was clearly an elitist society in plain sight. But it wasn't seen that way. And it still, for many people, isn't seen that way. I remember when I learned history in school, I learned about this. But they didn't use the word power elite. And it was always portrayed as, this was just a one-time occurrence. But it isn't. Look at all societies in history. They have had this elitist societies where a small power elite had this mindset I'm talking about. They were fundamentally superior to the people. And obviously in a democracy, the whole foundation for democracy is that nobody is fundamentally superior to anybody else. All men are created equal. They were endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. You see, what is being said there is there's a higher authority, whatever you call it, but there's a higher authority that has given all people the same rights. That is fundamentally against what the elitists throughout history have believed. They don't believe there's any authority above them. You see? This is the irony of the feudal system, which was created and supported by the Catholic Church, which claims to represent God and Christ. But see, what did Jesus say? The high shall be made low, the low shall be made high. All are equal in the mind of Christ. Nobody is superior. But the power elite want a system where somebody can be superior. That's why they don't like democracy. They don't want equal rights. They don't believe in equal rights. They believe they are the superior elite and they should have rights that the population don't have and that the population can't take away from them. And of course, you can say in a dictatorial system like China or Russia, Putin and Xi Jinping, they can take whatever they want from the people. But in a democratic system, That shouldn't be possible. Unfortunately, it is. And that's what I hope will come to light and more people will begin to see, so that we can make some progress of identifying that the real problem, the real threat, is actually the power elite. And especially in democratic nations, how they're using money to do this. You have again neoliberalism. Neoliberalist philosophy is fundamentally elitist. The government should step aside and allow the elite to do whatever they can do with the financial system. And the rising tide will lift all boats. Well, it hasn't. It's actually made most boats lie deeper and deeper in the water, and many of them are taking in water. So it's obviously a total lie promoted by the power elite. By the way, Richard Murphy that I was talking about, he also has a number of videos about the neoliberal system and why it's a failure. So I'm just saying, in a democracy, we actually have the potential to counteract the power elite, but we need to come to two realizations. First of all, there is a power elite, and they didn't become extinct when democracy was created. They have been trying to use democratic institutions, first of all, the financial system, to undermine democracy ever since. And if we don't defend our democracies against this elite, it will be undercut by the elite. And second of all, that what keeps the elite functioning in a democracy is the people's ignorance, that we are not aware of it. And with the internet, we have the potential to become aware and to identify that the real problem in democratic societies is the power elite. And that unless we do something about it, they will succeed in extracting wealth from the general population, moving it upwards so that a smaller and smaller percentage of the population control the majority of the wealth. And that is fundamentally anti-democratic. I mean, Elon Musk, is he a democratic person? Does he have a democratic mindset? Not at all. Not at all. Donald Trump, does he have a democratic mindset? No. He has an elitist mindset. But I guarantee you that beyond Trump, hiding are people who are much worse in their mindset than Trump is. Trump is just sort of the front figure. He's sort of the guy who wants to be part of the elite, but the real elite consider him, he's beneath them. They don't even care about him only as long as he serves their purpose. But their greater purpose is to take over, to buy influence, use their money to get influence in democratic societies. Why? Because they think they could run the country better than the elected representatives that are elected by the people. And this is their fundamental attitude. They believe they are superior to the population. Personally, I am very much a democratic person. You look back at history and you see some of the big disasters, wars and revolutions and collapses of society. They have all been created by a small elite. And I believe that the majority of the population, especially when they're educated, they will make better decisions than the elite does. And that's why I see democracy as being so important, because what is democracy fundamentally? Well, an elitist system is where very few people make the decisions that determine the fate of a nation, often just one person. Democracy is fundamentally an attempt to broaden the number of people who are making important decisions, so that it doesn't depend upon the whims of one person who might literally be insane, as many of these dictators have been. The more people that are involved in making a decision, the less likely it is that it will be an insane decision. And that's why I'm firmly committed to democracy. I also believe it's the best for raising the consciousness of the population, which I'll talk about in a series of talks that I've started recording. Why democracy is important, why it's the better form of government, and why we need to defend it.